here today, but my brother Xavier, who is our wonderful mother, Nieves. We want to thank you, President Jehanian and Dean Garrett, for allowing us to be a part of this wonderful ceremony, for us to hear firsthand from his friends and colleagues all their precious and personal memories of our father. We can't begin to thank you enough. I don't think I could begin to speak to my father's professional or academic accomplishments the way that you all could. I will say that as an uninitiated observer, that would Amazon be considering Pittsburgh as a potential site for its HQ2 had it not been for the transformational work that Angel and you as friends and colleagues did in the 70s and 80s? I venture to say probably not. Would CNN be sending its rock star celebrity reporters to survey the Pittsburgh hip restaurant scene a few weeks ago had it not been for the work that you all in this room with Angel did at that time, at that seminal transformational time? I would say probably not. What I would prefer to do, and I think Xavier would agree, is to share with you maybe a side that you didn't see, even though you were his family, we were his other family. What was it like to grow up with Angel? And I'd say that every day, especially on the way out and coming home, this was someone who was living his dream. And that dream was this university, its mission. As Mary pointed out, I remember so well growing up as a kid that expression, that saying that you all have here, that our heart is in our work. And it so much was a part of what he loved coming here. And with it, what comes with that, the sharing of this mission, which is about spreading knowledge and helping others, he loved sharing that with you, his friends and colleagues, and with his students. It wasn't for him about ego or titles or money or anything like that. I think that if we didn't ask him about his day, he wouldn't tell us. We didn't know sometimes about the things that he did unless we somehow forced it out of him. I'll give you an example. I remember it was 1992. I was a graduate student in New York, and he was in town for a big National Academy meeting up at the Waldorf Astoria, and he gives me a call and he says, "Why don't you jump on the subway and come on up and have a fancy dinner with me?" And I'm like, I can't rub two nipples together. That sounds like a great plan. So I remember going up there, and the plan was we were going to grab dinner and then meet some of his National Academy colleagues for drinks. And I said, Dad, I don't think I'm dressed accordingly. You no problem. I'm gonna lend you one of my jackets. Cool. He hands me a jacket, and I noticed when I put it on, it had a little on the lapel pin, small, round, it was bluish, made out of a fabric-y type of material. It was so small that I noticed it, but I didn't really pay it much heed. We went down, we had dinner, a lot like Pradeep described, fun dinners, right? And after that, we met his colleagues from the National Academy at the bar for drinks. And I remember one of those colleagues pulled me aside and he said, "That's not your jacket, is it?" And in a moment, I felt discovered and found out. And I didn't know what he meant. And he says, "That lapel pin you got there." Yeah. Because you realize that there's only so many dozens of folks globally that can say that they have a pin like that. And it was in a moment like that, I think, when you realize that my old man was a special person of unique attainment and accomplishments. But you had to drag it out of him. You didn't know. He wasn't one to come home and say, "It's about me." It wasn't about that. Those accolades didn't interest him. You interested in him. His students interested in him. And speaking of his students, I don't know if there's a way to summarize or symbolize all the many lives that he touched. So many of those students that went on to have successful careers in academia or in the private sector. He loved them all. He was, as Barry pointed out, he was proud of all of them. But if there was one maybe that I remember growing up, it would have to be Judith Resnick. And we all know he was so proud of her. And Judith Resnick, that amazing scholar, that amazing astronaut, we all just have those images frozen in time of her and that brave crew heading to the shuttle, boarding it, her with that black hair that she was so famous for, and the shuttle shooting to space. And we all know, unfortunately, that her career and those dreams were cut short. And I remember he was so proud of her, as he was of all of his students, and for months in 1986 and beyond, he would feel such sadness. And I think that showed to me firsthand in that household what it was like, what you all meant, what his students meant to him. Where did that mindset come from? Was it there in '56 when my mom Nieves came from Spain to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania? I don't know if he had that mindset already, that desire to share and that generosity. Maybe it came from all of you in this university. Our heart is in our work. Maybe as much as people talk about Angel Jordan shaping this university, maybe this university shaped him at a critical period of time. And it made him that selfless individual and that person who was so generous. And I like to think that's what happened. And because I know it's probably what happened, I know that for me, his son, and my brothers, and my mother, that you made him the wonderful father that he was, and we will always be so grateful for the university for doing that. So grateful to Carnegie Mellon University. Thank you.
I think Art basically said most of the things I want to say, but I just want to give you some context where I think Dad, not Angel, not Dr. Jordan, came from. Not just physically and geographically, but spiritually. As most of you know, he was born in Pamplona, but he actually grew up in this little town called Anso, which is in a little valley on the border between Huesca and Navarra in the Pyrenees there in Spain. It's one of the most isolated places I've ever been to. I first went there with him on a road trip. And it's still very isolated now. It had 1,000 people when he was growing up there, and it has about 300 now. So he was a product, I think, of that town in a number of ways. His mother was the school teacher of the town, one teacher, okay? And his father was the telegraph operator, which I think is the nearest thing to an engineer you would have in that part of the world. And Anso is it's a beautiful place. It's very isolated, but it's the kind of place, it's very high up in the mountains, and it kind of makes you think about what's beyond, okay? So here's this guy who was the son of an educator, who was the son of an engineer, okay, who had an opportunity to go out into the world and to work with all of you and to make an impact with all of you. And he really was a product of where he came from, and then he was a product of where we ended up, which is here with all of you. So from this little town of 1,000 people to what is now a global institution, it's really it's an honor for us to have had him as a father who could be your friend and your colleague and your mentors. And you know, Art was talking about Judy Resnick, and I forget who the poet was, but I remember right after the Challenger disaster, Ronald Reagan gave a wonderful speech, and he ended the speech, and like I said, I don't know who originally stated these lines, but he ended the speech paying tribute to Judy Resnick and the other Challenger astronauts. And I would like to sort of say the same words about Dad. The speech ended, he slipped the surly bounds of Earth and touched the face of God. Okay, so everything kind of is connected, and what was said about the astronauts, I think I could say about him. But I just want to end my remarks. One of my favorite writers is Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the author of The Little Prince. And he once wrote, I don't know exactly where he wrote it, but it's kind of a good way to end at least my statements. He wrote, "If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood. Don't give them tasks and work. Rather, teach them to long for the great immensity of the sea. Okay, and I think he did that with all of you. He micromanaged maybe here once in a while, but I think he gave you and he gave me and Arthur and the rest of us a longing for the long game. I think someone used that term earlier today. And that's what I got out of being his son. He really taught me to think beyond the bounds of Pittsburgh, the way he thought, beyond the bounds of Unsolved, and to think about the sea and to long for it, and not just to build a ship, you know, in a very micromanaged and kind of a way, but to build it because you really love the sea and you want to use that ship and visit places and make a difference beyond your own little circle. So I thank you all for being here and for having been his other family. We really loved you as well as, I hope, as much as he loved us.